Well, joining us now from Westminster is the Labour MP Chuka Umunna, who was the Shadow Business Secretary under Ed Miliband. Have you decided whether you're going to vote with John McDonnell against the Conservatives, or are you considering abstaining or doing something else?
Well, I certainly won't be supporting the Chancellor's Charter for Budget Responsibility, not because I don't believe in the notion of running a surplus. I do think that's sensible when the economy is running at full capacity. But frankly, this is a gimmick on the part of George Osborne. What this is really, actually, it's a symbol of George Osborne's failure. Let's not forget, I mean, talking about relevance there with Gary Gibbon in the package just now, George Osborne described the notion of legislating to run a surplus, for the government to run a surplus. In 2010, he described that as vacuous and irrelevant. And now it seems that he's done an about turn and has decided that you should be doing this.
Yeah, okay,
and that's
fine.
Because he has failed to do what he said he would do, which was eliminate the deficit by this financial year.
But
he's
you
not
are
going
saying,
to achieve that to 2018-19.
You are saying that you might abstain, aren't you? So, I mean,
well,
you may, for the first time in your parliamentary career, defy a Labour three-line whip.
Well, I want to see the grounds on which we will be voting against tomorrow. As Paul Mason just said in your discussion with him a moment ago, we don't actually know the basis on which we're going to be voting tomorrow. Of course, we had a different position 2 weeks ago.
But he has written to you. I mean, what don't you know?
Well, we don't know what has changed over the last 2 weeks. I mean, I was pretty iffy, I have to say, about going full throttle and supporting the Charter for Budget Responsibility, as was the position over 2 weeks ago, because I didn't believe it allowed enough flexibility to account for shocks in the economy and also to account for anything you do that have an adverse impact on the productive capacity of the economy, which is ultimately what you need to increase to get the tax receipts in, which will reduce the debt and the deficit. Let's not forget, we do need to reduce the debt. 80.3% of GDP is the debt to GDP ratio, and at the moment, I always make this case, there's a progressive case for reducing the deficit. We're wasting £36 billion this financial year paying interest to city speculators and investors who hold government debt. We actually are paying more to them than we invest in housing, than we invest in skills, than we invest in transport,
but this is
which
a mad
is why, as I said,
situation
reducing...
for you to be in, isn't it? That you're going into the parliamentary debate tomorrow without knowing what your own party's position is. I mean, have you asked John McDonnell? I mean, at the end of his letter, he said, if you'd like to raise any questions, do get in touch. Have you been in touch?
Well, he actually has said to the parliamentary party that he's going to spell out the position in detail during the debate in the House of Commons tomorrow. What I'm most concerned about...
That you're going to wait for him.
Hang on just a minute. Tristan, stop trying to put words in my mouth and let me answer the question. At the end of the day, what I'm interested in is us mounting the strongest and most credible opposition to the Tories' economic policies, because ultimately I'm not sure they're going to produce growth. And actually what they're going to be doing, as the Resolution Foundation illustrated vividly last week, is heaping misery on millions of people. They're saying that the summer budget is going to push more than 600,000 children, mostly in working families, into poverty as a result of George Osborne's measures. Now, I don't believe that we should be seeking to balance the books off the back of those living in poverty in that way, but I do believe we've got to balance the books. And ultimately, the way you do that, Krishnan, is by better balancing our economy so we have more high-paid work. Yeah. We saw from the Office for National Statistics...
That's not what John McDonnell's saying, though, is it? I mean, what he keeps talking about... Well, hang on, let me just ask the question. I mean, what he keeps saying is this is all about hitting big business, big corporations, and rich individuals. That's how the government is going to balance the books. That's quite a different message to the one you're talking about right now. Well, and I have to bring you back to this question of you not knowing what his position is. I mean, I thought that this new politics was all about discussion and debate before Labour goes goes into its positions. If they're not talking to you about what their position is Ben Bradshaw wrong to describe this as a shambles?
Well, I think he said it in more colourful terms than you just cited just now.
Was he wrong?
John McDonnell can talk for himself, and he will explain to the House of Commons in full why the position has changed over the last 2 weeks.
But was Ben Bradshaw wrong?
Well, look, ultimately, to be an effective, credible opposition, you need a consistent position. It would be better if we had one. But we're going to get that tomorrow. And ultimately, what I'm interested in, what are the industrial strategies that John will be saying that we're going to prosecute, and how are we actually going to ensure we don't have so many people in low-paid work? And also, of course, a really important part of this equation, which we haven't mentioned yet in this interview, is how do we get more affordable housing? Part of the reason, government costs quite a lot is because we pay a lot in housing benefits. So let's actually provide more affordable housing.
Interview, but I mean, this is also a question of party management.
Yeah.
Is it a shambles or not?
Well, look, you're seeking to put words in my mouth.
No, I'm not. I'm putting to you what Ben Bradshaw said yesterday when he walked out of the parliamentary party.
Look, I think everybody acknowledges, and from the leadership down, that this perhaps could have been handled a bit better. But ultimately, what we've got to focus on is exposing the really big U-turn here, which is George Osborne deciding that now is the time to start legislating for a surplus, when he said that was a vacuous and irrelevant thing to do in 2010. And the reason he's doing that is because he has failed to do what he said he would do, which is eliminate the deficit by this year. And frankly, he's only managed to get it on a downward trajectory by rushing through asset sales and selling the taxpayer short through things like the disastrous privatisation of the Royal Mail, which was completed today.
But as things stand, you still don't know tonight whether you are going to defy the Labour leadership for the first time in your parliamentary career tomorrow. Doesn't this really, throw into stark relief the problem with what you said in September about the need to unite? Because, the trouble is, on your first big dilemma, you don't know the night before the vote whether you can unite or not.
Well, I'm very clear, I will not be supporting the Conservative position tomorrow. And as I've said before, I have no intention of rebelling in the way that some people in the leadership rebelled when they were backbenchers. But I want to actually listen to the debate tomorrow and then come to a view. And my view has always been that, frankly, this Charter for Budget Responsibility that George Osborne's put forward is just a political stunt. And ultimately, it's not going to make any difference to the lives of your viewers. And that's what I'm concerned about.
Chuka Umunna, thank you very much.